A video I made 2 years ago called Why I, in brackets, Don't Want a Relationship was recently picked up by the YouTube algorithm and suddenly gained more than 2,000 views. Looking at the comments, it seems like the message of the video was misunderstood by some people to be hating on the concept of relationships as a whole, whereas my actual intention was to simply point out the wrong reasons we might enter into a relationship, such as trying to get love that we don't first give to ourselves, and making sure that if we enter a relationship, we are doing it for the right reasons. I've processed and developed a lot since then, and I wanted to share some of my further reflections on this topic. I like to say that we are many people during our lifetimes. When I was a child, I was the kid raised to have low self-esteem, because that way I was easier for my parents to control and manipulate, so that I wouldn't speak out against their dysfunctional and chaotic relationship. Because someone who believes that he is a piece of crap will stay ruminating about his own faults, rather than trying to speak out about the faults of others. And I had such low self-confidence that I didn't get a girlfriend until I was 22 years old. I literally had very little attention from women until then. And I married my first girlfriend because I felt that no one would ever love me other than her. But alongside that desperation, I also had this beautiful vision of wanting to be entirely devoted to one woman for my whole life, to experience everything with her and to explore and grow with her, both in terms of sexuality and life. And so I lost my virginity age 24 on my wedding night. But what followed was a marriage that was almost entirely sexless. I remember the frequency in the first few months went from a few times a week to once a week to once every few weeks to once a month. And when I tried talking about it, she denied that there was anything wrong. And the advice on the internet is spectacularly unhelpful. You always find some shallow suggestions about, oh, do more housework, make sure that all her non-sexual needs are taken care of, and then you will get your needs met in due time. And at the same time, I was also going to a Christian counselor who parroted the same advice to me. If you take care of your partner's needs, eventually they'll feel able and happy to take care of your needs. And I did that. I spent every ounce of my energy and time making sure she had the most comfortable life possible. She complained that she was tired from traveling to work, so I moved us to a place that was 5 minutes away from where she worked, bought the best mattress money could buy, so that she would get the best sleep possible. I made sure I gave her attention. We went on dates 2 or 3 times a week, and every weekend we would do whatever she wanted to do. I bought her whatever clothes she wanted, whatever shoes she wanted, Louis Vuitton handbags, took her on holidays to the Caribbean. And nothing I did worked. Nothing got back from this relationship what I was hoping it would give. And she didn't like my family, and I would start visiting them without her coming along. But eventually she told me that I had to choose whether I wanted to have her in my life or my family. And given that I was already raised to believe that there was nothing I could do to make my family happy, I made what was a horrifically painful decision to stop talking to my family. And that continued for 15 months, with me every so often breaking down, crying how much I missed them. And as dysfunctional as my family were, I still had a bond with them. And I gave that up for her. I remember that was one of the only times that she hugged me, sincerely. But did it fix things? No. Nothing was ever enough. Nothing I gave could satisfy that toxic formula. Put your partner's needs first and then you will get your own needs met. And if you look at the world, we can see it's clear that's not how attraction works. Attraction is not something that you negotiate. People don't have affairs because someone came along and did all the dishes for them. And if anyone is wondering, during this time, I never cheated. I was surrounded by hot CrossFit girls, and I remained faithful to this woman I married who couldn't even hug me like she loved me. And looking back now, there's such a contrast because I'm a dancer, and on the dance floor in one night, I can get more hugs, love, and affection than I ever did in my entire marriage. And this isn't from people who are interested in me romantically. This is from people who just are my friends or just enjoy dancing with me and have no further interest in me other than that. And that, going back to that advice on the internet, yeah, it's useful for people who are neglecting their marriage, but I actually don't think most people are neglecting their relationship or their marriage. And yeah, neglect can damage a relationship, but there are also a great many people who are sexually engaged with partners who are abusive or neglectful. But on the other hand, being a doormat and giving everything to another person, regardless of how they treat you, that's not going to make them attracted to you. In fact, it's the opposite. And I think my failing as a husband was not in not putting enough effort in, but the fact that I put in huge amounts of effort on a premise which was false. I believed that what I was doing was good and pure and full of integrity and would work out in the end. But here I want to take two lessons from Friedrich Nietzsche. Number one, he said, hope is the worst of all things because it prolongs the suffering of man. I was just prolonging my suffering by hoping things would get better rather than walking away. And number two, I was beautifying my slave morality into a virtue. Now, the background of this was that Nietzsche hated Christianity because he saw it as glorifying weakness. You're powerless and you can't do anything about it, so you come up with cope ideas like the meek shall inherit the earth. How convenient. And whether or not he's right, I think it's important to question, are we making a weakness a virtue? Sometimes they're just weaknesses that need to be addressed. And sometimes the right thing to do is not to passively hope, but to rebel. But I digress. My ex-wife always told me that the more I voiced my concerns or my feeling sad about the situation, the worse it would get. So I just kept my mouth shut and just tried to pretend that everything was fine. And eventually, because I kept reaching a breaking point and voicing that I didn't feel good, and then I would be told that I've just set us back weeks or months because I opened my mouth and made her feel bad. And then also being convinced that somehow there was something wrong with me and how I felt about how she was treating me. This has reflections on what I was told from my childhood that I had to believe in order to survive. Seeing that there was a problem with me, that I would ruin my marriage if I didn't shut my big mouth, I started going to therapy. And I went in with an attitude of, my wife is wonderful, and if only I could keep my big mouth shut, then things would get better. And I explored every other topic with that therapist, but everything kept coming back to the marriage. My mindset moved from, no way am I going to even consider leaving this marriage, to, okay, maybe we need some space, to, okay, I am going to get space, and I will divorce her if she refuses. And the divorce ended up being way messier than I ever thought possible. But following this, I started again. Age 31, having only kissed one woman in my entire life. And the first woman after this I was sexual with was this Spanish girl who, she was beautiful, had a great body, a beautiful smile, charming, energetic, an amazing contrast to what I had before. And the relationship didn't really last that long. And at the end of it, my friends were high-fiving me for having sex with this really hot girl, and I was feeling inside, I just wanted her to love me. There was a book written a few years ago by clinical psychologist Cindy Meston and evolutionary psychologist David Buss called Why Women Have Sex. And it explored the complexity of female sexuality and the myriad of reasons why women have sex. And in the reasons, there were some overlap with male sexuality, such as, both genders have sex because they feel horny or to feel loved and to receive validation. But there are also other reasons for women, such as increasing social status, mate poaching, protection against mate poaching, to feel better when they're feeling down, to assuage any sense of guilt. And while male sexuality is simpler, I wouldn't say it's simple. Because, like with that Spanish girl, I've now become very conscious that when I've had sex with a woman I've really liked, I've often been motivated by my desire to win her love rather than just enjoying the act of sex for itself. And that can actually lead to being less likely to achieve the goal of winning her love because I'm not in the present moment and I'm putting myself under pressure. It's like there's a voice inside my head saying, this might be your only chance of love, so you better get it perfect. And that's completely antithetical to reality. Sex usually improves as people build familiarity and trust. Expecting to give or receive sexual perfection the first time is completely unrealistic. And the best sex I've had in my life was never with someone that I had just met for the first time. It was always after some time of getting to know each other, where there's trust and we've had already time to explore. And maybe this might be why I seem incapable of finding much satisfaction with one-night stands. I've spoken to men who see sex as a conquest. Well done, you've managed to get her into bed, so that must mean you got her, right? You won. For me, there's not much of a conquest to it. Getting a woman into bed is far easier than building a relationship with her. And sometimes it falls into your lap. A few weeks ago, I was having a conversation with another foreign guy who lives in Warsaw, and both of us talked about how several times we felt that we've been used as some kind of exotic experience. I believe I have a lot to offer in a relationship, and frankly, I find it insulting to my dignity to be treated like an experience to be sampled, a box to be ticked, just to be the right dick at the right time, as if anyone matching a similar physical description would do, especially if I made it clear what my goals are. But instead, I feel like I'm added to their collection like I'm some kind of fucking Pokemon.
Who's that Pokemon?
It's Pikachu!
It's Clefairy!
Anyway, going back to Nietzsche's warning about portraying weakness as a virtue, I must also recognize that my perspective on this is shaped by my history and my traumas that I've faced. And even though I've mostly healed from them, it could be that I'm just too damaged to be able to enjoy sex without commitment like I would say most men do or would. What if it isn't that there's some special quality in me, but the damage I carry that makes me think this way? It's a possibility I must entertain. And yet, I don't advocate overthinking this. Each of us must play the hand that we're dealt. If we're working on ourselves, eventually the damage that held us back will come to the surface and be healed. But if we don't, well, it's like Carl Jung said, until you make the conscious Okay? Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So we must continually work on ourselves to become the best person we can be, physically and mentally. I've been in good shape since I was a teenager. I started lifting weights when I was 13, but I've consistently improved my mental health since I started going to therapy 7 years ago. And that has improved every area of my life, including my relationships. I now get more dates than I ever have at any point in my life. Last week and the week before, I was traveling on the weekends to dance festivals, but I had scheduled first or second dates on every evening of the week. 2 weeks ago, one girl I had scheduled for a first date, she flaked on me. She cancelled 50 minutes before the date, and I didn't get upset. I didn't even text her back. I just texted 2 other girls that I was interested in getting to know, and ended up meeting with one of them and had a great conversation for several hours with her. And I really believe that good people are attracted to me now because that deficit I used to have of self-love, that I wanted a relationship to provide to me, I don't need a relationship to provide it. Now, there's a huge difference between, on one side, choosing what you perceive to be your only choice, thinking, no one else will love me, no one else will want me, so she must be the one, like I did in my 20s, though I wouldn't have admitted it to myself. And on the other side, searching for the best possible candidates and not committing until and unless you feel really sure that this person is someone who you would really want, but not need, to be in a relationship with. So now, my life is good. Do I want a relationship? Only for the right reasons. And only with the right person. And I'm going to choose very carefully. If you've made it this far, congratulations. Thank you for listening. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you want to hear more from me. And yeah, hopefully this has been some interest to you. Thank you for listening.